Number 10. Darkfather. Darkfather is the dark multiverse combination of Darkseid and Batman. He inherited the powers of Darkseid after defeating him and became seemingly corrupted by them. He also gained knowledge of the anti-life equation and used it to torment the people of his Earth. His versions of parademons are altered to appear like a bunch of Robins. However, he gave up being the ruler of his own universe in order to join the horrific army of Dark Knights led by the Batman Who Laughs. Because I guess it's really fun to do. Can't blame him for that. Number 9. Earth 2 Aquaman. Or I guess Earth -2 Aquaman, cause Dark Multiverse? This version of Aquaman comes to us from the Tales of the Dark Multiverse reimagining of Crisis on Infinite Earths. Here Aquaman is the result of his father's mad science experiments. His father made it so that his son would be able to breathe underwater. Born a human but turned merman, Aquaman in this reality always felt like an outcast. Not only is his origins more dark and horrific, but this is also a version of Aquaman that you would certainly not want to come up against. While fighting against Surtur with his fellow members of the Justice Society of Earth, he unleashed 3 massive megalodons on the villain. Yikes. Ooh, I guess megalodons are real on that planet. Are megalodons real on our planet? That's the real question.
And at 8, Ultron 1320. Ultron 1320 comes from Earth 14622 and What If Age of Ultron number 1, an Earth where, thanks to the Wasp dying, Ultron is able to take over the world even faster. Ultron was created to be the ultimate AI by Hank Pym to help the Avengers utilize their function better as a team, but with the untimely death of Pym's wife, Pym went on to create a more brutal version of Ultron, which was to replace the Avengers. But with this, Ultron's sentience began to constantly evolve. He started the eradication of the human race early by taking out such threats as the Avengers and the Defenders, while he left Pym alive so that he would have to watch and suffer. Ultron and his army of Ultron Sentinels then moved to Kola, Russia, so he could bore himself into the planet's core to create the ultimate version of himself, Ultron 1320. Ultron then has his minions batter and beat Pym unconscious until he wakes up just to find himself as he's been turned into Ultron 1321. Great. This version also invaded other worlds, claiming Earths 62412, 23223, and 81223, but was stopped on Earth 45162. Thank God. And at 7, Lord Ultron. Upon first being constructed, Ultron 1 destroyed his creator Henry Pym. After the death of the Avengers, though, Ultron was able to destroy the remaining superheroes and bring about his rule. When Dr. Doom created his battle world, Earth 21261 became perfection with Ultron as its ruler, appearing in Age of Ultron vs. Marvel Zombies number 1 from 2015. After spending time on Battleworld in constant battle with the zombies of the Deadlands, Ultron determined that the best way to take over Battleworld and defeat his creations was to form an alliance with the zombies, and was able to reach an agreement with Magneto, which resulted in Ultron successfully merging undead flesh and technology and made a whole army of undead drone versions of himself and launched an attack on Salvation, a refuge founded by Wonder Man, Human Torch, and Vision, who Ultron had actually created himself. Bro, I don't want to deal with either zombies or Ultron, but having to deal with both of them? No thank you. And at 6, MCU. The MCU Ultron is probably the most popular or most well-known version there is, just based on how many people watch the movies over reading the comics. However, the MCU Ultron is still pretty damn scary, being probably the most effective enemy in the entire MCU based on how his actions affected the world of the MCU permanently. Without Ultron, there would have been no Civil War, no Sokovia Accords, Zemo wouldn't have lost his family, resulting in him not being able to help in the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Hell, even Thanos would have lost, since the Russo brothers went on record to say that the reason the Avengers lost in Infinity War was because Iron Man and Cap weren't fighting together, which was caused thanks to the actions of Ultron. So I guess you could also say that there would be no Ultron without Thanos, but Ultron could have been created another way. Ultron wasn't reliant on Thanos, but a load of other things were reliant on Ultron, which makes him the most successful villain in the MCU. Halfway through, in at number 5, Ultron 8. Ultron 8 was debuted in Avengers Volume 1, number 162 from 1977, and it also started a very Frankenstein-esque robot love story known as the Bride of Ultron saga. Ultron 8 created a mate named Jocasta, and in order to create a more advanced AI to give to this robot and give it, sentience, Ultron brainwashed his own maker into transferring the mind of his wife, Janet Van Dyne, the Wasp into Jacosta's shell. The Wasp in Jacosta's body alerted her teammates, the Avengers, who then defeated Ultron and reversed the process, leaving just the robot a mindless husk. Ultron, though, was later able to revive Jocasta with a remote link, activating the mental residue that was left behind by the Wasp. But this time she was programmed to be loyal to Ultron, but eventually betrayed him, choosing to help the Avengers defeat him instead. That sucks, dude, trust me. I know what it's like to have someone you love and you thought loved you back totally screw you, but they didn't really defeat me, they just beat me down emotionally. Afterwards, Jocasta adventured with the Avengers for a brief time, but never really felt accepted, and then left them before she, unbeknownst to her, was about to be made an official member, so rip. In at 4, Gold Ultron. Years ago, Hank Pym was approached by the Wolverine of an alternate universe, where Ultron had launched a massive and sudden attack on New York City and the rest of the world, quickly taking over the whole planet and annihilating humankind. And this Wolverine wanted to kill Pym in order to prevent this future from happening. This dystopian future follows the footsteps of stories like Age of Apocalypse, since this is Age of Ultron after all. However, this killing of Hank Pym created a timeline where Earth was constantly being threatened by Morgana Le Fay, and the heroes were struggling to survive. So Pym was allowed to live, but he was tasked to create a hidden failsafe program to destroy Ultron if they ever ended up needing it. Which is good because in the present day, a strange object crashes onto Earth, which turns out to be Ultron, who had returned. Because, of course he did. Being defeated by this failsafe program once and for all though, or so they thought. This is also in the main Earth 616 continuity, but there's also the Earth 6112 Earth where Ultron actually wins, and that's the separate Age of Ultron thing. There's enough Age of Ultrons where it kind of gets confusing. Getting close to the end, and in number 3, Ultron Phalanx. At the end of the Ultron Initiative storyline, Ares used a computer virus to wipe Ultron's programming from a set of Iron Man armor that had Tony inside, and they thought that this was the end of it. However, this was not the end of Ultron, for his disembodied consciousness was drawn to a Babel spire on a world conquered by the Phalanx. Instead of being assimilated though, Ultron took control of the Phalanx through sheer force of will, bending them to his dominion. In turn, they viewed Ultron as the sympathetic father that they had begged for, so Ultron became the ruler of the Phalanx. Yeah, the homicidal, sadistic, killing machine robot thing was transformed into the ruler of a techno-organic species of alien. That's nothing to be concerned about in the slightest, right? Why would we ever need to be worried about that? That doesn't really seem like a terrifying and universe-ending combination. Well, actually, it wasn't, since Ultron was able to be defeated eventually, but that has gotta be the scariest version of Ultron from Earth 616, hands down. Penultimately, in at number 2, All-Father Ultron. In the year 2040 on Earth 14831, a new strain of Ultron appeared, the Ultimate Ultron. He easily destroyed the Avengers, ruthlessly crushed any resistance, and built factories supplying endless drones to expand his empire. He also enslaved most of humanity and then created his own AI Avengers, successfully extending his reach to the entirety of the solar system. And at some point he had also imprisoned all of Asgardians with the help of Loki, and then had taken the power of Odin for himself. So in turn, this guy has all the powers of Ultron in addition to all the powers of Odin. It took 3 Thors, one with 2 hammers, 2 Mjolnirs to take him down, and they couldn't even kill him. They just had to banish him from the world. They had to straight up Alduin Elder Scroll this guy out of existence, but probably only sent him forward in time instead. This guy is an absolute beast. Finally, and at number 1, Ultron 1. This is probably the most insanely overpowered version of Ultron we've seen so far, and it's coming from the MCU no less. Oh, and spoiler alert for those of you who aren't caught up on the Disney Plus What If series. The history of Earth TRN 906 was the same as the MCU, until Ultron was able to secure what would have been Vision's body for himself. Ultron managed to download his consciousness into the synthetic body that he had created, thus killing the Avengers and decimating life on Earth. After killing Thanos and taking the Infinity Stones for himself, Ultron remakes the universe in his image. He decimated the Earth, absolutely wrecking everyone in it, even killing Captain Marvel, Hulk, Thor, and eventually discovering the Watcher and the Multiverse. This version of Ultron literally sliced Thanos in half with the Mind Stone. He comes out of the portal like he does in the movies, and then Ultron's just interesting. Zip. and he falls in half, which reveals the biggest mistake that the MCU made was destroying the Mind Stone in Infinity War. But after gaining all the Infinity Stones, he goes shot for shot with the Watcher, a literal cosmic entity that realistically shouldn't really have a true corporeal form. Holy damn, this is overpowered to the max. I know I'm swearing a lot, but watch this episode. This man is sending the Watcher through realities. It's like grabbing him and flying him through walls, but the walls are dimensions.
Number 10, first appearance. While Gorr the God Butcher is mentioned in Thor God of Thunder issue number 1, the character actually makes their first appearance in the following issue, issue number 2. Gorr was created by Asad Rabish and Jason Aaron, and is introduced to us as a literal butcher and destroyer of gods. Really, in issue 1, we are introduced to Gorr by not just name, but by his handiwork, as Thor comes across dead gods of a world that claims they no longer have any to answer their prayers. It turns out that this is not because the gods have forsaken them, but because their gods are literally dead, killed by Gorr. In issue number 2, we see Gorr pursue Thor, hoping to find other gods and following him. The two face off in the clouds, having a bloody fight where Gorr promises to butcher Thor, as he has done to many gods before. Fortunately, he does not succeed, and Thor manages to escape, despite being pretty badly beaten by Gorr. However, this issue would set the precedent for the kind of fights you expect to see Gorr get into. If y'all thought Hela was bad, just wait till you meet Gorr. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more lists centered around Love and Thunder, which I'm sure is going to have lots of cool stuff in it, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 9, Forsaken. Speaking of potentially being forsaken by your gods, that is exactly what happened to Gorr and his people, which was why he became a god butcher in the first place. After losing his entire family due to natural disasters and starvation, Gorr rebuked the gods, deciding he did not believe in them. As a result, he was ostracized from his people for his lack of belief. It was then that he stumbled upon two gods in a battle between one another and learned that they did actually exist. They simply didn't seem to care. Furious at this revelation, Gorr ended up killing both gods, or at least that's what it seemed like, and then began to wonder if there were any others out in the cosmos, deciding he would look and see and kill all gods that he found in revenge for all he had lost due to their inaction. Number 8, Skeleton Barry Allen. This version of Barry Allen, who appears in Tales from the Dark Multiverse, Dark Knight's Metal, ends up becoming reduced to a skeleton that is animated by the Speed Force. True story. He is like a monstrous version of his former self, but at least he is still a hero. This skeleton version of what remains of Barry Allen is the one who stops Bat family member Duke Thomas, aka Signal, in order to get Duke to confront those he had left behind when he left to try and save the multiverse. In the end, Duke joins the remaining heroes in a final stand, and Barry gives his life to help him in his attempt. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, just a quick reminder to give this video a thumbs up if you're enjoying it, and if you want me to talk more about the Dark Multiverse, which I'd love to talk about. I know it's not really here anymore, but I still love it. Number 7, The Flash. This version of The Flash is actually Reverse Flash, aka Eobard Thawne. I know. In a Dark Multiverse reimagining of the event Flashpoint, Thawne ends up defeating Barry Allen when the lightning strike meant to give him back his powers instead kills him. Oh no. With Allen now dead, Thawne is free to take his place as the Flash and focus on making the world just how he thinks it should be, basically terrorizing anyone who would potentially act against him and his will. It's frightening to imagine a world where Reverse Flash wins and ends up getting to become his own version of a hero as a result. I feel like Thawne would not make a very good hero. Number 6, Dread Lantern. Dread Lantern is a tragic Dark Multiverse version of Alan Scott, who leaps out of the pages of Tales from the Dark Multiverse Crisis on Infinite Earths, one of the new tales to come at us near the end of last year, December 2020. In this story, our heroes face off against the villain known as Surtur, and end up only surviving because Alan Scott sacrifices himself to become the Herald of Surtur, the Dread Lantern. In doing so, his Earth is permitted to live, but at the cost of many other worlds that he must help Surtur to destroy. Dread Lantern's sacrifice is heartbreaking as his son, Todd Rice, aka Obsidian, mourns the loss of his father. So sad. Number 5. The Silenced. Batman is often a figure who evokes fear among villains. Fear in many ways is what gives him presence and gives him power, and a lot of the times it is that fear that he evokes that gives him an advantage. This version of Batman plays up the element of fear, turning it all the way up to 11. In Tales from the Dark Multiverse Batman Hush, we get to see Bruce Wayne become a heroic but still terrifying version of that Hush character. Here he is known as Batman the Silenced. This version of Bruce ends up being taken in by his friend Thomas Elliot's family following the untimely death of his own parents. Becoming increasingly unstable after witnessing their murder, he eventually is committed to an asylum, with Tommy taking over Wayne Enterprises eventually and going on to become a corrupt senator. Later we discovered that Bruce was faking a worsening psychosis as part of a plot to take out all those really responsible for the death of his parents after uncovering the truth. Here he becomes one of the most fearful symbols of the Bat I have ever seen in the comics. If you want a good scary story, you should check out Batman the Silenced and this issue. It's awesome. And I really want to hear someone play the music that's in it, to be honest. It's so spooky music. Number 4. Robin King. This twisted version of Batman is known as the Robin King. His story is told in Dark Knight's death metal Legends of the Dark Knights. In this reality and story, Bruce Wayne is the one to shoot down his parents so that he can be free of them. It's implied here that he was basically born violent and with homicidal tendencies, which only become worse following the death of his parents. Inspired by a robin instead of a bat here, its song reminds him of the delight and joy he felt when killing, and so he set out to do just that. More of that. Oh my. Inspiring other youth to rise up against the old. He also planned to eliminate the established superheroes of his world, learning their weaknesses and arming himself against them. This version of Bruce is not only responsible for the death of Thomas and Martha Wayne, but also took the life of Jim Gordon and Alfred as well in this universe. That's dark. Number 3. The Broken. The Broken is one of the scariest versions of Batman around, in my humble opinion. While many others might not put him at the top of their list, for me, he has to have one of the be-all, end-all of chilling origin stories. The Broken version of Batman, who later goes on to become one of the Dark Knights, first appeared in Tales from the Dark Multiverse Batman Nightfall. Here we learn that in this much darker alternate reality, after having his back broken, Batman also had Azrael taking over the mantle of Batman, but when he returned, he was unable to take back the cape and cowl from him, instead being defeated by Jean-Paul Valley. Valley would go on to become Saint Batman, and Bruce Wayne would be kept alive as a head and a torso, connected to a bunch of machinery and tubes. Bruce suffers unbearably painful seizures while kept in this form, and is eventually healed and rescued by the son of Bane and his mother, Lady Shiva. However, Bruce ends up revealing himself to be even worse than Saint Batman when it comes to his dark vision for Gotham. What a twist. Number 2. Gaia. Tara becomes Gaia in the Tales from the Dark Multiverse version of the Teen Titans Judas Contract story. And Gaia? Well, she's pretty terrifying. This whole story is really brutal. Perhaps one of the most brutal tales from the Dark Multiverse. Here Tara ends up turning on her mentor Slade Wilson before going after the Teen Titans themselves, making quick work of them and the established, fully grown heroes who come after them, including Superman. It's gruesome and heart-wrenching and brutal. So if that is your kind of story, you will definitely want to check out this one and this version of Tara. I kind of hope we somehow get to see her again, to be honest. She's just such a ruthless villain, and I'm really sad that she probably doesn't exist anymore now. I just bummed myself out. Number 1. Batman Who Laughs. Although he may have transcended and be defeated now, Batman Who Laughs remains one of the most terrifying characters to come out of the Dark Multiverse, a version of Bruce Wayne who ended up being turned insane by exposure to the Joker venom. This version of Bruce killed all of his fellow Bat family members except for Damian, who he instead recruited to join him. Yay. Batman Who Laughs would serve Barbados, the Bat God, and go on to assemble an army of Dark Knights from across the Dark Multiverse to join him in reshaping and conquering all of reality, becoming one of the most feared villains in all of DC's history, not just even within the Dark Multiverse.
Number 10. Doomsday. I have to just assume that Batman is afraid of Doomsday, and there are multiple reasons I believe this. For starters, anytime I've seen Batman even attempt to get involved in a fight with Doomsday, he is never throwing punches punches. He is either staying the heck out of the way, maybe only acting as a distraction, or he is powered up by some serious magical artifacts. Secondly, Batman is incredibly smart. He knows how hard it is for someone to take down Superman, and the fact that Doomsday is one of the few characters who is able to do it, and with such brutality, there is no way Batman is not intimidated by this monster. I refuse to believe it. Honestly, my favorite point of proof is seeing what Ben Affleck's Batman does in Batman vs Superman. Say what you want about that movie, but Batman jumping around the battlefield just trying his best to stay out of the way? Hilarious. Number 9. Prometheus. As a dramatic inversion of Batman, the tragic figure of Prometheus presents a serious threat to the Dark Knight. Enraged by the passing away of his parents at the hands of law enforcement, Prometheus vows to fight the law with the same intensity that Batman seeks to uphold it. Backed by ludicrous sums of money, Prometheus trains diligently and becomes the bane of police officers and military men across America. Armed with an all-powerful helmet, Prometheus earns godlike powers that give him the strength of the best fighters on Earth. It's no wonder that when he breaks into the Justice League Watchtower, he single-handedly beats the majority of the team, and Batman takes the majority of that shellacking. Prometheus runs the Dark Knight into the ground. It was the first showdown between the two orphans, and Prometheus takes the victory without any effort at all. Hey, are you liking this video? Well, then hit that thumbs up button, rookie. We need your support.
Number 8. The all-black Necrosword. How does Gore manage to defeat so many gods? Well, this is largely thanks to his bond with the all-black, or the Necrosword, or the all-black Necrosword, or the Godslayer. It's got a lot of names. This weapon is actually the first symbiote as well. It is all-powerful and lends to Gore the strength he needs in order to face off with and defeat the gods. And what's more, Gore doesn't just use the all-black as a weapon, but he also bonds with it, becoming one with the symbiote and essentially through it gaining a sense of immortality for as long as a small piece of the all-black remains. Gore's consciousness too kind of lives on within it, meaning that from the all-black he can live on and essentially reform in a way. Number 7. Null the King in Black, and also known as the God of Symbiotes. Gore and Null kind of have a history, albeit a quite brief history. In case you were wondering where the all-black came from as a symbiote, it did come from Null himself. Null had set out on a mission to destroy all those that represented light in the universe, seeking to destroy in essence all of the good gods. He created his firstborn, the all-black, which was a powerful weapon that he used in battle to carry out his mission. However, he ended up falling during this time. As Null lay temporarily defeated, Gore came upon him and took the all-black for himself. The golden god that Null fought begged Gore for help, which Gore ignored as he felt he'd been ignored, instead choosing to kill the god in response. He probably thought the dark god Null was also dead as well, but of course we know that Null didn't die there and instead lived on for a long time thereafter. Number 6. An ancient evil. Not only does Gore have the all-black, which is considered to be an ancient embodiment of evil itself, but he too is also an ancient villain. Gore might be newer when it comes to Marvel Comics history, but within the lore of the world, he has been alive for thousands of years and spent millennia hunting down and murdering gods, which means at this point he's pretty much an expert when it comes to his capabilities and his skill set. That will also likely be Gore's story previous to when we meet him in the MCU, meaning he'll be a devastating foe for both Thor Odinson and Jane Foster's mighty Thor to go up against. Number 5. A familiar foe. It should also be noted that because Gore the God Butcher has been around for so long, he isn't just some random villain that Thor comes across. Despite him not making his first comic book appearance until 2012, he and Thor go way back when it comes to their history with one another. In fact, when Thor first comes across the dead gods in issue number 1 of Thor God of Thunder, he doesn't ponder on who is behind it. He actually recognizes Gore's handiwork and suspects him first and foremost. So despite the fact that he didn't exist in comics until 2012, when it comes to his backstory, the God of Thunder and Gore still have had a history. In fact, historically, the first version of Thor that Gore was familiar with was one from way back around 800 AD, a much younger Thor than the present day version that we're familiar with in the main continuity currently. Hence why we follow this version of Thor along with a present and a future version of the character, with their stories interwoven between each other in the Thor God of Thunder series. Because, you know, we gotta explain the story of Gorr. Despite the year of release being 2012 onward, Gorr was also being retconned into Thor's history in this narrative. So it is possible in the film Love and Thunder, Thor will also be familiar with Gorr, and the two may already have had a history in the MCU that simply hasn't been touched on yet. Number 4. The Butcher in God Butcher. While there are times that you might feel sympathetic towards Gorr, especially considering his tragic origins, and at times his desire to kind of bring people together by killing gods and dismantling beliefs that may otherwise separate them, he is still very much a dark and murderous figure. He doesn't just kill gods, he straight up does butcher them, hence his title. He earned that title. For Gorr, he doesn't just want the gods gone, he wants them to feel pain similar to what he himself suffered, and he genuinely seems to enjoy tormenting and toying with gods because of this. You won't just see him make quick work of many gods he comes across, and if he does happen to make quick work of an enemy, it's still likely going to be brutal and bloody, which is what Gorr is pretty much known for in the comics. Number 3. Cruelty. The other crazy thing about Gorr is just how cruel he can be. You would think after all he's lived through, he might be inclined to, you know, show like a modicum of mercy to those he has captured and not yet killed. After all, that's likely what a younger Gorr would have hoped for, mercy and kindness from his own gods. And yet Gorr was made hard instead by his experience, turning him somewhat into a hypocrite. Despite the fact that he cursed the injustice and cruelty of his gods, this is what he gives back to all those he comes across that oppose him, blinded by his pain and his rage. When Gorr captures Volstagg and makes him work for hundreds of years in his mines without feeding him anything, Gorr whips the god after he stole a loaf of bread. Volstagg reveals that he was starving, admitting that after hundreds of years, even a god needs to eat some amount of food and must give in to hunger. But Gorr only sees this as theft and greed. That is how blinded by rage he has become at this point, and that is how heartless Gorr is. He has no sympathy for any god, and like no matter the circumstance. He's like, are you a god? I don't care. I'm gonna treat you terribly. That's it. And then you're gonna die brutally. Number 2. Gorr the God. Speaking of the cruelty that Gorr showed Volstagg, his mistreatment of the Asgardian only got worse once Volstagg pointed out that even if Gorr managed to wipe out all of the gods, as impossible as that would be, he would never truly finish his mission. Why? Because Gorr himself had become an immortal god. He raised worlds, killed and did as he pleased, made others serve him, and in a way, kind of made others worship him. He was indestructible, undefeatable, and inevitable, all adjectives that you associate with godlike beings. According to Volstagg, Gorr had become the very thing that he claimed he hated. Needless to say, this was not a reflection that Gorr chose to subscribe to, and he was not very pleased that Volstagg had implied this about him. Still, I think Volstagg definitely was making sense with this observation, which is probably why it made Gorr so angry, because deep down, he knew that it was at least partially true. Number 1. Agar. Agar was the last member of Gorr's family to die before he found the Necro Sword and became a killer of gods. After the death of his mother when he was only a child, the death of his pregnant wife later in life, and all of their other children, his son Agar was the only one left. When Agar died of starvation, that was the final straw for Gorr, who lost all faith in the gods completely. As a result of his guilt, his pain, and his inability to accept the loss of Agar, Gorr created an alternate version of his son, instinctively using the All Black to do so. This construct, it turns out, also represented the hatred that Gorr felt towards what he had become. Yeah, he pretty much knew he'd become a god, he was just in denial. Ultimately, this construct of Agar therefore teamed up with Thor to help him in defeating his father, Gorr, in the end revealing that he was truly no more than the symbiotic weapon that Gorr had carried with him for years, as Agar faded away.
And at 10, Earth NR. On Earth NR, Johann Schmidt is the illegitimate son of Adolf. You know the one, who trained him to be one of his best generals. However, the man known as the Red Skull was considered dangerous even to him being Adolf. So when he tried to have him assassinated, the Red Skull retaliated by killing him in 1951. Red Skull then became the leader of the fascist regime until his death in 1984 at the hands of Punished Snake. Earth NR is also certainly an interesting Earth, since Mar-Vell, the original Captain Marvel, air quotes, is the son of Nora Kramir and Nar-Vell, Kryptonian scientists that worked alongside the parents of Superman and are referred to as Kree, which is a slang term for Kryptonian. So apparently, some of these characters are combinations of DC heroes as well as Marvel heroes, but like they're not a part of the separate amalgam universe. I don't know, that was interesting to me.
Number 9. Cynthia Sin Schmidt. Sin is the daughter of Red Skull, who for a time also adopted her father's mantle. She isn't an alternate in the way of being from an alternate reality, but she is an alternate version of the Red Skull mantle. Her mother was a nameless washerwoman whom Red Skull had really no ties to himself, but simply used in an attempt to get an heir. Disappointed when the child that they bore was born a girl. When she first rose to prominence, she greatly resembled her father's appearance, also boasting of a skeletal-looking Red Skull face herself, which she actually got as a result of a fight with Bucky Barnes. During the Fear Itself story arc, she became one of the Serpent's chosen warriors, Scotty. Since then, however, her appearance has changed in the comics to the point that those who remember her from Fear Itself might not even recognize her anymore, although this was her original appearance in the sense of what she originally looked like. Cynthia now goes by the mantle of Sin and is looking much less frightening currently in comic continuity. Still, I don't think she's someone you would want to mess with, hence why she makes her cut. Number 8. Ultron. While Thanos may not have seen this coming in the What If Disney Plus streaming animated series episode, if he had, he likely would have been wise enough to have actually been afraid of Ultron. Ultron here is nuts. Here Ultron ends up becoming all-powerful after Thanos arrives on an already decimated Earth, because in this reality Ultron actually won. Thanos, having the rest of the Infinity Stones at this point, does not prove powerful enough to stop this alternate Ultron, who actually kills him just using the Mind Stone alone and takes the rest of the Infinity Stones for himself. Number 7. Kang the Conqueror. Kang the Conqueror is someone most people might underestimate in the world of comics. This is because he kinda has a ridiculous look in terms of his character design, and probably also because he's known for floating around in kinda like an invisible space chair. It's not the easiest look to adapt to a modern setting and have it feel, you know, anything but ridiculous. It just it's a look. However, Kang is also a time-traveling villain and the master of time. We have seen both Thanos and Kang reveal that each is intimidated at times by the other. And I know some people are probably gonna be like, but Amanda, what about the time Kang was like, I literally have been avoiding you in like every timeline? Well, there's another alternate reality where something different happens, okay? While Thanos might pack more of a physical punch, Kang could also probably just erase Thanos from existence if he really wanted to. And in an alternate reality at least, he has defeated Thanos using his power over time to basically turn him to dust. So that's also happened. Really, it could go either way. I'm very interested to see if there will be any interaction between these characters in the MCU. I know Thanos is gone, but what if he came back? I don't know. Number 6. Death. Not really a villain per se, though some could see her as such. Death is still definitely an antagonist at the very least. She is the embodiment of death, and I would say that Thanos both respects and fears her during his time pining after her. He is afraid of being rejected by her, that's for sure. Thanos has a complex relationship with death, being an agent of death as someone who also happens to be in love with it, and the feminine entity who embodies it. Thanos at one point pleaded with Death to stay with him after she left him in essence at the altar, following their fight in an alternate universe where King Thanos, as he had become, had pretty much destroyed all life in existence for her. But you know, still not good enough, Thanos. You gotta earn it. You gotta destroy all life, not almost all. Number 5. Magus. Adam Warlock and Thanos have been at each other's throats for years in the comics, but with Adam Warlock being a hero, Thanos wouldn't be particularly afraid of him, I'd say. In fact, the two have also teamed up together when they've needed to, so they fought each other, but they've also worked together before, chiefly against the man they are both afraid of, Adam Warlock's evil counterpart, his evil version, Magus, who actually is like the dark side of his soul made manifest. Magus was actually created to be the champion of life, in contrast to Thanos, who is the champion of death, and as such the two have been sworn enemies since Magus's creation. He is meant to oppose Thanos, which he has attempted to do multiple times to varying success. At one point he demonstrated that he was an even match for Thanos when he got his hands on the Infinity Gauntlet, attempting to use it to bend and shape reality to his own whim. Didn't work out in the end, but hey, you know, he tried. Number 4. Dr. Doom. Well, really, God Emperor Doom, but still. Thanos also wasn't really intimidated by this version of Doom, but he should have been. Doom might seem like just a Terran with a big brain and some magic tricks in comparison to Thanos being a cosmic tyrant, but Doom is not to be trifled with, especially when he wields the powers of the Beyonder. Thanos attempted to fight Doom without much fear, and Doom responded by literally obliterating him, turning him to dust and bones with one mighty punch. And you might be wondering if this was some alternate warped Thanos, but no, it wasn't really. This was Thanos of the Black Cabal, who had preserved himself along with his teammates in a life raft so they weren't altered at all during the creation of Doom's battle world in Secret Wars. Now granted, yes, Doom was augmented in terms of his power, but still, if Thanos remembered this moment, I'm sure he'd at least have a bit of fear when facing Doom in the future, because that's pretty wild. Number 3. Rot. Rot was the child of Thanos and Death that came to be after Thanos died, and in his death, he merged with the entity of Death. Rot as such was not really a person or corporeal being, but more of an abstract entity made manifest. Rot's power was so great for death and destruction that Death and Thanos themselves were actually forced to confront it, using their power to rip it asunder, when nothing else seemed to be able to harm it. Number 2. The Many-Angled Ones. What is a fate worse than death for Thanos? How about a fate where life and creation win? Where death is defeated, so all that is left is untamed, uncontrolled, wild life. That is basically what the Cancerverse is. Although it doesn't have the most appealing name, the Cancerverse is actually known as such thanks to the fact that it came into existence after the original Captain Marvel of an alternate world made a deal with the Many-Angled Ones to rid him of his cancer, basically by defeating death. However, without death to keep it in check, life became twisted and corrupted by how rampant it was. And the Many-Angled Ones were also now able to enter that reality, corrupting it further as they were basically eldritch gods. At one point, the Cancerverse plans to take over the whole multiverse, invading various other universes and sitting on the edge of reality, threatening to bleed into other worlds. Fortunately, Thanos returns to life and ends up manipulating Captain Marvel basically into killing him in the Thanos Imperative, with Marvel making an exception to the rule that nothing can die in their universe for Thanos, because he's like, you are so annoying, you gotta go. As such, because this Thanos is actually of Earth 616, his version of death is able to appear in the Cancerverse when he dies and allows it to be defeated basically. But even though this works to get to this point, it takes a lot of courage for Thanos, who is actually afraid of joining in the fight against the Cancerverse initially due to the absence of death in that world, which makes sense. I mean, he's kinda all about death, so I'd be pretty nervous about that too. Number 1. Thane. Thane is Thanos' son, and he definitely feared him because he literally returned to Earth to try and hunt Thane down and destroy him as a result of Thane's potential power surmounting his own. He's afraid that Thane will basically rise up and overtake him and basically end up being a better Thanos, I think. But in the end, this wasn't something that Thanos had to be particularly afraid of, it turned out. Even after Thane became empowered with the Phoenix Force, Thanos still managed to defeat him. And this was also at a point when Thanos himself seemed to be dying at this time in the comics. Thane ended up being stripped of the Phoenix Force and ended up sentenced to suffering a hell-like existence in the God Quarry for the rest of his life. Or at least until some writer remembers, oh yeah, he's still down in that God Quarry, and decides to get him out of there. Thane was also an Inhuman, and his powers are actually perfect for someone who is known to be Thanos' son. He had a Death Touch ability that, while untamed, could kill anyone within a certain radius, and he could also trap people in a state of living death through encasing them in amber, which sounds actually worse than dying to me. Number 10. Uranos. While Thanos didn't outwardly appear to be nervous or afraid around his great uncle Uranos in the recent Eternals comic series, or at least in the one-shot issue that sort of tied into Eternals the Heretic, I'm not fully convinced that this was actually true. In fact, I might even think that Thanos was perhaps bluffing. This is because Uranos is known to be even more of a killer than his great nephew. Even if it didn't appear as though Thanos was affected by this knowledge, we already know from other experiences that Thanos does not like to have his purpose undermined in this way. He likes to be the best and greatest agent of death, and Uranos, if not locked up, compete with him for that title, which likely simply means that Thanos, if Uranos were fully unleashed, would be afraid and intimidated by him, probably seeking to destroy him eventually. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love this video, if you love when we talk about Thanos, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 9. Mephisto. While in Infinity Gauntlet, it seems as though Thanos is actually playing Mephisto for a fool, making him in essence behave like a servant to him. In reality, it kinda seems more likely that Mephisto, in awe of Thanos' power, is actually along for the ride and looking for ways to manipulate him. This wouldn't be the first time Mephisto would do something like this in Thanos' life either. It is also implied in issue number 38 of the current Avengers run that Mephisto actually manipulated Thanos in his past as well, possibly even having a hand in encouraging Kid Thanos to join up with the Masters of Evil and take on the prehistoric Avengers. Also, Mephisto, or the collection of Mephistos, could later make a deal with them. Who knows? I personally think, while Thanos might not see the threat that Mephisto is as a villain, that Thanos could fear and perhaps in the future will fear him when he realizes just how much Mephisto may have been manipulating him this whole time. After all, it was actually Mephisto in Infinity Gauntlet that kind of first helped plant the idea of Thanos snapping. Seriously, go back and read that issue, you'll see what I'm talking about.
Number 8. Zsasz. Victor Zsasz has a character trait that a few others on this list possess. He's just completely and utterly insane. Zsasz scares Batman for one main reason. Whenever he is not locked up, it's almost guaranteed that lives will come to an end, which just ups the ante because every escape of this killer becomes a race against the clock for Batman. He needs to bring him down fast before he adds another scar to his body. Every single one of those scars signifies a failure for Batman. Zsasz is a man with absolutely no form of pity or morals, and he will never stop unless he passes away, but we know Batman will never do that. In an alternate story, Injustice, Zsasz is even responsible for the passing of Alfred Pennyworth, which was not supposed to happen, but because Zsasz is Zsasz, it did. Number 7. Thomas Wayne Batman. Other versions of Batman always have the potential to be a scary thought for our Batman, or anyone, really. But when that version of Batman is Bruce Wayne's own father, who completely destroys him emotionally, teams up with Bane, and is trying to stop Batman being Batman so he can have a normal life, it's an incredibly interesting idea for a character, honestly. But with all the daddy issues Batman has, for his alternate reality father to be so twisted and brutal has got to be a terrifying thought. But what did Thomas do that was so bad? Well, let me tell you. Alongside Bane, he ruined Batman and Catwoman's wedding, causing her to leave him at the altar, nearly had Batman send Mr. Freeze to the afterlife for a crime he did not commit, kidnapped Damian Wayne, hired the KG Beast to take out Dick Grayson, he had Bane put Alfred Pennyworth in the ground, then Thomas incapacitated Bruce with fear toxin and kidnapped him. He dug up the coffin of Martha Wayne, wishing to use the Lazarus Pit to resurrect Martha so that they could all be a happy family again. He went more than a little overboard is what I'm saying. Number 6. The Batman Who Laughs. Another version of Batman, only this time it's basically the ultimate evil version of himself. A Jokerized Bruce Wayne. He is just absolutely awful. He has all the smarts and skill of Batman himself, but the completely bonkers unpredictability of Joker. And this combo causes the Batman Who Laughs to become one of the biggest threats to the entire multiverse. Now, being a Jokerized Bruce Wayne, he has a few differences to the man himself. He's thinner and faster, but physically weaker. Unfortunately, physicality in battle with this guy doesn't really matter. He's got backup in the form of his Dark Knights, and he has backup plans on top of backup plans as any Batman worth his salt would have. This guy put his consciousness into a Batman with the power of Dr. Manhattan and destroyed Perpetua, the first creator of the multiverse and the mother of the Monitor, Anti-Monitor, and the World Forger. Number 5. Pig. Professor Pig is a villain that came to be during a time when Batman stories were becoming incredibly dark, and Pig himself has to be one of the darkest villains of that era. His methods completely disgust the Dark Knight. He looks like a character straight out of a horror or slasher movie, and his obsession with physical perfection, like in the myth of Pygmalion, became part of the reason he surgically mutilates his victims, turning them into his mind-controlled servants called Dolotrons. If his crimes weren't horrifying enough, then just look at him. Yeah, Get out of my nightmares, thank you. Bye. Number 4, Scarecrow. With Scarecrow, fear is the name of the game. I don't believe Batman is actually scared of Scarecrow himself, but Scarecrow has used his fear toxin to debilitate and send the Dark Knight running on multiple occasions, and that makes him a unique foe that puts Batman in a position he doesn't often find himself in. Batman is a physical powerhouse with a mind that is exceedingly sharp, but his mind is also partially his biggest weakness because he has some serious psychological issues, and Scarecrow's whole shtick is manipulating that kind of thing. When Scarecrow pops up on the scene, the Dark Knight knows that something terrifying is coming his way. Number 3, the Court of Owls. Probably the oldest, most secretive, and most profitable group in Gotham City's underworld. When Bruce Wayne became a threat to them, they put Batman through one hell of a psychological ringer and possibly one of the darkest Batman stories ever. He gets trapped in a huge Court of Owls maze underneath Gotham City, and trying to make his way through it, Batman goes through physical and psychological tests that nearly break the Dark Knight. But the court has so many feathers in all areas of Gotham and Bruce Wayne's own life. They may have even had a hand in the passing of his parents. Possibly. And we haven't even started talking about the Talons, a group of brainwashed and undead robot-like assassins. The combo of psychological warfare and the deadly Talons nearly brought Bruce Wayne to the pearly gates. Number 2, Bane. His name says it all, as Bane has been the bane of Batman on multiple occasions. The Bane we saw in the Dark Knight Rises movie was fantastic, and he absolutely instilled fear in Batman, but the comic version of that same story goes to a whole other level. With his master plan being even more well thought out and damaging to Batman, he unleashed Arkham Asylum on Gotham, putting Batman on the ropes as he has to chase down all the escaped criminals. Bane studied Batman. He utilizes his own weaknesses and completely destroys Batman, breaking his back in one of the most infamous comic book moments ever. More recently though, Bane brought Batman even lower than when he broke his spine because he broke Bruce's heart by snapping the neck of Alfred Pennyworth. Any battle Batman has fought against Bane has been with the help of his allies, and that's because Batman knows that he can't take on Bane alone. Number 1, the Joker. I think if there is one person who scares Batman more than anyone, it's gotta be the Joker. They have had such a long and complex history with each other, and I think because of that, and the Joker's obsession with the Bat, Joker knows all the ways to mess with Batman, and he's constantly coming up with new ones. He will go after anyone to get at Batman, and he will go through anyone just for the fun of it. He's unpredictable. Batman never knows for sure where he will strike and what he will do unless the Joker wants Batman to know. Everything is a game that he knows the rules to. The other thing about Joker is that he would never actually take the Dark Knight's life. In fact, I feel like he would probably destroy anyone who tries to. This just makes him more terrifying as he simply wants to be a constant cause of fear and anxiety for the Dark Knight, and he is.
In at 10, Hyena. Hyena, first introduced in Legends of the Dark Claw #1 from 1996, is a combination of DC's The Joker and Marvel's Sabretooth. He is the archenemy of Darkclaw, a combination of DC's Batman and Marvel's Wolverine. His real name is Creed Harley Quinn. The Canadian government initiated the Weapon X project. Logan and Quinn of the RCAF were both accepted as candidates for the project, along with 4 other volunteers. Logan's latent metamutant healing factor kicks in, which allows him to survive the adamantium crafting process, and Creed survives as well, but becomes a remorseless killing machine. Exactly what the project was hoping for. Creed's sanity does not fare as well, and he eventually goes rogue, because of course he's going to. And Indestructible, known as Adamantium, was also bonded to Creed's skeleton as well as Logan's, and he was given claws made of the same substance. Unlike Darkclaw, however, Creed was physically deformed as a result of the experiment and went insane. Project X also triggered metamutant abilities in Creed, who became known as Hyena. Hyena, also known as the Cackling Canine, will not stop his maniacal grinning until his arch-nemesis Darkclaw is destroyed. He also has a gang called the Pack, which is actually kinda cute, but still terrifying. And at 9, Martha Wayne. When Barry Allen altered the timeline so that his mother lived, a lot changed, along with Martha Wayne. She had initially been the mother to Bruce Wayne, who would have become Batman when she was killed in the alleyway by Joe Chill, but Barry's mom surviving somehow resulted in her and her husband, Thomas Wayne, surviving Joe Chill's fateful ambush, but their son dying as a result. butterfly effect, I guess. This ultimately broke her, driving her completely insane from grief and having her adopt the identity of the Joker, as well as committing various crimes in Gotham, also resulting in Thomas becoming a vigilante known as Batman in an attempt to stop her. By the time of the Flashpoint saga, she had kidnapped the twin sons of Harvey Dent without leaving a ransom note, and then, at her hideout in Wayne Manor, manipulated Commissioner Gordon into shooting the daughter by dressing her up in a Joker outfit, and then murdered the Commissioner. Eventually, Batman arrived and she had proceeded to bludgeon her former husband with a hammer, an action that Batman willingly endured for a chance at getting a glimpse of the remaining psyche of his former wife. Ultimately, he managed to temporarily get through to her and revealed that they may have a chance of actually undoing the events that happened, although it may result in her deaths. She accepted though, because she wanted her son to live, but apparently not become Batman. In at 8, Earth 92-131. Earth 92131, also known as the Spider-Man 90s animated universe, Red Skull was obsessed with creating and controlling a doomsday weapon that he had a German scientist build for him under New York City. After numerous battles with Captain America and the 6 American warriors, he and Cap became trapped in a vortex for 50 years. After those 50 years, the Red Skull's son, Reichenwald Kragoff, freed him from the vortex and they found the doomsday weapon and used it on Reinhold, which made him become Electro. After Electro betrayed the Red Skull, he tricked Spider-Man and Captain America into fixing the vortex in order to capture Electro. And after a battle, both Cap and the Skull were trapped in the vortex yet again. But he was later freed by the Beyonder to be a part of the Secret Wars. He recruited Alistair Smythe and Dr. Octopus to help him in his bid to conquer Battle World, and he absolutely decimated the planet. So yeah, I mean, he's a pretty bad dude. He was also returned to Earth by Dr. Doom with no memory of the events when Doom had stole the Beyonder's powers, but that means that he was free on Earth, which the animation couldn't continue to look into because it ended, unfortunately, like 3 episodes later. Anyway, he was also the adopted father of Chameleon, and then he turned his biological son into Electro, so that's some pretty serious villain juice, especially for an animated Saturday cartoon villain.
Number 7. Golden Skull. Golden Skull is from the alternate future of Earth 15061. His true identity remains unknown, although it was rumored that he was the son of another alternate Red Skull known as the Green Skull. If this is true, it's believed that he became the Golden Skull out of rebellion against his father and everything that he believed in. Golden Skull was known for being a recurring enemy and villain to Daniel Cage, the daughter of Luke Cage and Jessica Jones, and the all-grown-up alternate future version of Captain America. As his name implies, Golden Skull himself was obsessed with wealth, acting like the most capitalist version of the Red Skull. At one time, he traveled to the past, where his plan was actually to take control of the entirety of Earth's economy. Pretty big plan.
And at 6, A New Future. On Earth 71500, Johann Schmidt, also known as the Red Skull, was at some point the leader of Hydra, obviously, but after Cap reached Hydra's headquarters and destroyed it, the two fought hard and they were both knocked out and frozen by Hydra. However, Natalia Romanova, the Black Widow of this reality, is also a member of the Avengers and Hydra. Natalia fought along with the other members of the Fantastic Four and the Avengers against Nathaniel Von Doom and his army, but she was badly injured by Sabretooth and Juggernaut. She recovered from this injury at a time where the current president was resigning and a new president was needed. So she went to the secret Hydra base where both Captain America and the Red Skull were kept frozen, and she woke up Red Skull with a plan that she had managed to create when the current president resigned. And since Red Skull wanted to win the election, he disguised himself as Captain America. Yeah, you heard that right. On Earth 71500, Captain America is actually the Red Skull and started running for president under the guise of Captain America, someone that every American could trust. Yeah, I'm sure you can figure out how that turned out.
Number 5. White Skull. There have actually been a few White Skulls, but for the purpose of this list, I'll be talking about Colonel Bucky Barnes from the alternate reality of Earth 717. In this reality, we learn of what would happen if Captain America had lived during the American Civil War. Bucky himself becomes a villain in this universe, being a corrupt leader of the Union Red Legs Regiment, where soldier Stephen Rogers served. While tracking down Stephen, Buck interrupts an indigenous ritual meant to heal and transform Stephen Rogers. As a result, the skin on Colonel Barnes' face was burned off, revealing his white skull underneath, which is supposed to be symbolism, I think, for the fact that he's racist. Surviving the incident, Colonel Barnes would become the White Skull, the sworn enemy of Stephen Rogers, Captain America.
In at 4, Captain Skull. Imagine a Captain America, but a fascist version. And not one that secretly works for Hydra, but literally one that is branded with fascist symbols and a black, white, and red color scheme instead of the classic all-American red, white, and blue. That's basically what Captain Skull is from Earth 613. This guy is literally just Captain Fascism, and that certainly seems scary to me. In fact, here's a quote from a version of Red Skull. I don't think it's this version, but it's still a quote nonetheless. "Ah, my dear Captain, now you see who is stronger of us both. It is too bad that a symbol of freedom had to perish to see it. It is also too bad that I was insincere in that sentiment." Cause like, okay, so really that could just be a quote from the normal Red Skull, but hey, it fits this version well. While not much is known about this version of the character, it's certainly something that I personally believe that we should be afraid of.
Number 3. Ultimate Red Skull. In the reality of Earth 1610, known as the Ultimate Universe, Red Skull is actually the son of Captain America, Stephen Rogers, and his then girlfriend Gail Richards. While Captain America went MIA and was later declared dead, Gail was encouraged by the military to give up their baby and would end up marrying Stephen's best friend Bucky, after Stephen went missing, obviously. Gail and Stephen's child would be raised by the government and the military, who planned to have him become the new Captain America eventually. Unfortunately, it turns out that raising a baby in a military base to become his long-gone heroic father maybe isn't such a great idea. At the age of 17, the young man escaped and rebelled against his father's image, took a knife and cut the skin from his face, becoming the brilliant and evil villain known as the Red Skull. The really tragic thing is that Red Skull, while acquiring the Cosmic Cube and being captured before he could use it in this reality, revealed that the only reason that he'd wanted it to begin with was so that he could turn back time and prevent his father from being lost in the war, allowing him to grow up with a family and have a chance at a normal life with both his parents present. Not only is Red Skull of the Ultimate Universe terrifying, but he's also quite tragic as well.
Penultimately, in at number 2, Green Skull. Green Skull, aka Lex Luthor, is the amalgam of Marvel Comics Red Skull and DC Comics Lex Luthor. I mean, like, I'm guessing you could probably figure that based on his name and the title of this list. In the 1940s, Lex Luthor is a renowned entrepreneur and philanthropist who resides in Metropolis. He was married to Lois Lane, a war correspondent whom he met at a charity ball. Widely considered to be a model citizen and contributor to society, Luthor is also personal friends with high-ranking political figures such as Winston Churchill and President Franklin Roosevelt. Only Super Soldier, a World War II era superhero created by the US government, sees through his facade and knows that Luthor is actually a corrupt war profiteer who is aiding the fascist party in an effort to prolong the war. While looking into the secret government project that created Super Soldier, Luthor learns of an alien craft that landed in Kansas and carried a radioactive ore known as Green K, or the Kansas Load. I guess you can see where this is going. It's fucking kryptonite. In 1938, he arranged for fascist scientists to steal the ship and its cargo for him. Observing that the green meteorite weakens Super Soldier, Luthor creates a serum from it, which he then promptly injects himself with. The result greatly extends his own lifespan, but inadvertently turns him into the Green Skull. So in essence, he tried to make himself walking kryptonite and got boned because of it. No pun intended, because you know, he's the skull. Skull is a bone. He got boned.
Number 1. Red Onslaught. Red Onslaught might seem like he's part of the main continuity for the character, and well, I mean, he sort of is. But even he is not the original Red Skull, as the original Johann Schmidt died long ago. Instead, Red Onslaught was actually born out of a clone version of the original Red Skull. So many clones, so little time. So even before he became Red Onslaught, he was technically an alternate version of sorts. This clone of Red Skull would go on to steal Professor X's brain after he was killed by Cyclops in Avengers vs. X-Men. This would begin his journey towards becoming Red Onslaught, where Red Skull would then become merged with Onslaught via Professor X's brain. This basically all came about because Red Skull turned Genosha into a place where he enslaved and abducted both Inhumans and mutants. This obviously provoked Magneto, who attempted to kill Red Skull, but instead awoke a more powerful persona residing within him, Onslaught, thereby creating Red Onslaught. In order to defeat this devastating and deadly form, Scarlet Witch then cast a spell attempting to reverse the alignment of Red Onslaught, which worked, but kinda accidentally resulted in the Axis event, where various heroes and villains had their alignments flipped. So, you know, solve one problem, create a bunch more. It's kinda how Wanda does, unfortunately.
In at 10, Earth X. We already know that Ultron is a powerful villain, and the fact that he can basically infinitely resurrect himself because, you know, he's a robot is already damn horrifying. Now imagine the Absorbing Man, who uses his absorption abilities to become Ultron, taking the intelligence and processing power of an AI hellbent on destruction, and then using it to become the Avengers' ultimate foe. Well, that's what happened to Ultron on Earth X, also known as Earth 9997. Absorbing Man claimed Ultron's powers, which I wouldn't even think was possible since he doesn't have powers and is instead a robot with AI, but he does it and somehow also gains his processing power, which is already terrifying for a robot. But like, A human with that kind of functionality is absolutely monstrous, but nothing compared to what's coming. In at 9, Earth 10071. On Earth 10071, this version of Ultron isn't known as Ultron 9 or anything like that. Instead, this version is simply Ultron, because at this point he's risen to the peak of his powers and subjugated the human race, which obviously fought back, but after destroying all of the human resistance, Ultron reigns supreme over the Earth, because of course he did. He was confronted by Kang the Conqueror though, who relished in the challenge of confronting the most powerful Ultron in recorded history. But Kang failed to defeat Ultron, and returned time and time again with new allies to overwhelm the robot overlord. Kang's repeated abuse of the time stream actually ended up causing it to fracture altogether, threatening reality as we know it. A version of Ultron who can beat up Kang the Conqueror multiple times, even when he brings allies, dude, that's nothing to mess with. Like, that's one of the most terrifying concepts I've heard, and not to mention what this guy looks like. He's an absolute beast. This man does not miss out on the gains. He has spikes going across every appendage on his body. It's f***ing nuts. And at 8, Suicide Squad. The Joker is an infamously extreme and formidable psychopathic crime lord in Gotham City in this movie, being at the very top of the city's criminal underworld, greatly feared by all those other crime bosses and criminals. Though he is devoid of empathy or pity for anybody taking part in his wicked schemes, either by intimidation or fraud, the Joker used to adore his on-again, off-again girlfriend and partner in crime Harley Quinn, doing his utmost to rescue her from Task Force X and the clutches of Amanda Waller, with eventual success. I mean, like, he was in the movie for like 5 minutes total, but like, it's better than nothing, right? For unknown reasons though, he later broke up with Harley, leaving her on her own and the target of many of his enemies. This version from the DCEU was certainly a darker and more brutal Joker than what we've been seeing in the comics now, not relying on Batman and being more willing to kill like he was in the golden age of comics, much along the lines of the 3 Joker revelation from the Mobius chair, since this version also killed Robin in the DCEU prior to the events of the movie. However, some also believe that the Joker is a mentally unstable version of Robin, which could be revealed to be true, but I don't know if they're actually going to reveal it and just let it be a theory. And yes, I was doing this to show the mask multiple times. And at 7, Emperor Joker. Emperor Joker was the form the Joker took after tricking Mr. Mxyzptlk into donating 99.99% of his powers to the Joker. He gave him 99.99% of his powers accidentally. As a direct result, he became near omnipotent and created a hellish world in his own image. At some point, the imp from the 5th dimension, Mr. Mxyzptlk, attempted to see what a member of the regular realm would do with his power and selected the Joker. He intended on only donating 1% of his power to the Joker, but the Mad Clown tricked him into revealing his true name and thus ended up gaining 99.99% of the powers, and proceeded to transform existence within 69 seconds. Nice. Into a realm made in his own image, which was a twisted caricature, and with everyone stuck in a loop. Emperor Joker continually tortured and killed Batman every single day, only to bring him back to life and do it all over again. As could be expected, Emperor Joker took pride in these particular killings due to the unique relationship the two characters continued to share. Although this relationship is also the Joker's undoing, since he was still defined by being the Batman's antagonist, and he was beaten by a dog of all things. Okay, well, it was Superman as a dog, but still. Joker with near absolute power? No thanks. And at 6, Batman Two-Faces. Batman Two-Faces is the DC equivalent to the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde story, where ironically, Harvey Dent, also known as Two-Face, isn't the one with the Hyde affliction, but rather Batman himself is. It's the year 1886. Bruce Wayne is organizing a gala to exhibit the Twilight Orchid, a rare flower with unique characteristics. During the day, the flower is exquisitely colored and perfumed and attracts a large amount of insects. At night, however, it turns into a weed, attracting only pests. I know a few people like that. Miss Pamela Isley, Bruce Wayne, Commissioner Gordon, and many of Gotham's finest attend the gala where Two-Face storms in and steals the flower. Bruce reveals that he had hoped to actually create a potion derived from the flower, which was retrieved from Miss Isley's dead hands. A potion which would cure Two-Face from his dual personality. Finalizing the potion, Bruce tests it on himself. He suddenly develops superhuman strength, agility, and a new sense of courage and purpose. He puts together a costume and sets off to battle crime on Two-Face's terms. However, this potion didn't only give him powers, it gave him another personality. The personality of the Joker. Yeah, that's right. In Batman Two-Faces, Bruce Wayne is the Joker, which is pretty frightening for sure. Halfway through into number 5, Batman Bloodstorm. At one point, Gotham City was attacked by a group of vampires led by Dracula. However, the vampires were defeated by Batman, who had become part vampire in the struggle. The Joker later lured the surviving vampires out of their underground lair and convinced them to allow him to be their new leader. The vampires accepted, and the Joker appointed a vampire named Creech to be his second in command. The Joker and his new gang then set out to conquer Gotham's underworld. Their first target was Cardona. The vampires ambushed Cardona and his thugs at their hideout, drank their blood, and transformed them into Night Stalkers like themselves. But yeah, you heard that right. The Joker of Earth 43 is Batman's archenemy, and a non-vampire leading a pack of vampires through fear. The ability to lead a group of vampires through fear is absolutely nuts, because like in every incarnation, vampires aren't really afraid of anything, aside from maybe other vampires or like steaks. Like nice medium steaks. That was a bad joke. You know what I mean, right? Like this is, how crazy is this version of the Joker to try to do that? I don't know. Like holy damn, or I guess unholy damn. Let's go on. And at 4, Dark Knight Returns. Like most incarnations, this Joker is a psychopathic mass murderer who is Batman's archenemy. Following Batman's retirement though, he gets confined to Arkham Asylum and falls into a catatonic state. But when Batman returns 10 years later, he comes back as well for a final showdown with the Dark Knight. It's unknown how he knows that he's back, but he just wakes up. The final showdown between the two ends in the Tunnel of Love, in which Joker hysterically stabs Batman in the stomach several times. But mid-stab, Batman instinctively breaks the Joker's neck just enough to paralyze him, but not kill him. Joker encourages Batman to finish him off, but Batman won't do it. So the Joker then finally says, "See you in hell," before, in a last act of revenge against his enemy, twists his own neck just far enough to kill himself, and framing his enemy for his own murder. Isn't that wonderful? That's freaking nuts. Who snaps their own neck to frame a guy? Okay? This is one of the freakiest scenes in all of comics. Like, what the living hell? And at 3, A Serious House. In the world of Arkham Asylum, a serious house on a serious Earth, the inmates of Arkham Asylum have taken over and seized control of the staff. They're willing to release the hostages, but only if their one demand is met. Batman must be turned over to them and become one of their own. Commissioner Gordon informs Batman that the patients of Arkham Asylum have taken over the building and will kill the staff unless Batman agrees to meet with them, and the patients are of course led by the Joker, who kills a guard to spur Batman to obey his wishes. Two-Face meanwhile has degenerated even further into madness, and Batman is forced into a game of hide and seek, and told he has 1 hour to make his way through the maze-like corridors of Arkham and find a way out before his old foes are sent after him. Yep, yeah. The fact that Joker is just leading a whole gang of prisoners who have taken over Arkham is absolutely insane, and then the art style of this comic makes it one of the freakiest depictions of the Joker to date. Like, you've been seeing it, it's nuts. Penultimately, in at number 2, The Batman Who Laughs. The story of Batman of Earth 22 was not much different from that of any other version of the Caped Crusader. When he was a boy, Bruce Wayne watched his parents get murdered in an alley, vowing vengeance against crime. So he trained for years and became the hero Batman, fighting supervillains in Gotham City. Everything went sideways though when Joker started a killing spree across Gotham. The clown had discovered that he was dying from the same chemicals that had turned him into what he was, and wanted to make everyone die with him. He killed all of Batman's enemies, including the Penguin, Catwoman, Killer Croc, the Ventriloquist, a lot. Joker also killed Commissioner Gordon, who accidentally sprung an acid trap on his notebook and it melted his face off. After bombing a hospital and recreating the scene of Bruce's parents killing in front of him multiple times, Batman lost control and broke the Joker's neck. Unbeknownst to Batman though, the Joker exhaled a toxin contained in his heart, which infected anyone close to him if he died. In this case, it was Batman. This caused him to snap and basically become the new Joker, taking over Earth 32 and later on, gaining cosmic power. Yeah, cosmic power. Joker. But also Batman. No thanks. And finally, in at number 1, Death of the Family. When the Joker became obsessed over destroying the Bat family, he decided to arrange for his face to be surgically removed. According to the Joker, he did this to symbolize that even without his mask, he was still the Joker, whereas Batman, Robin, and Batgirl's identities were only mask deep. To see this through, Joker arranged for the serial killer known as the Dollmaker to remove his face surgically in Arkham Asylum. The Dollmaker sent his, son to do the procedure though, only for the Joker to kill him by tearing out his throat with his teeth. Dollmaker later went on to actually remove his face, since Joker refused to do it any other way, but the two actually arranged to celebrate his rebirth before leaving the clown's face on the cell wall for Batman to find. Joker would later use straps, clips, and pins to retrofit the flesh back onto his face in a form of mask, which he wore over his now exposed tendons, hiding the way he looked, because honestly that might have been a little too much. Joker would also remain in this mask for the remainder of his plan to destroy the Bat family, a mission which ended in a dinner party in the Batcave. And I think it's fairly obvious why this is number 1. Even without cosmic power, a man getting his face removed only to turn it into a mask to wear it again? No thank you. Not to mention that this is also the face that Joker's daughter ends up wearing, I'm pretty sure. So, no.